Right now, someone with less knowledge than you is being treated as the expert in the room. Someone with fewer accomplishments than you is being asked for their opinion first. Someone with less experience than you is being deferred to by people who should know better. And it's not because they're actually more qualified. It's because they understand something about human psychology that you don't. They know how to trigger the unconscious mechanisms that make people assume authority, defer to leadership, and follow without questioning. These psychological triggers are so powerful that they override logic, evidence, and common sense. And until you understand them, you'll keep watching less qualified people take positions that should be yours. If this resonates with you, hit that like button now. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to master the psychology of instant authority. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever watched someone with obvious authority command a room despite lacking credentials? Or do you know someone who seems to naturally make others defer to them? The forbidden psychology of authority isn't about manipulation or deception. It's about understanding the unconscious patterns that human brains use to quickly identify who should be followed in group situations. These patterns evolved over millions of years, when quick decisions about leadership could mean the difference between survival and death. Your modern brain still uses these ancient shortcuts, even in boardrooms and social situations where survival isn't at stake. Machiavelli understood that authority isn't granted by credentials or positions. It is taken by those who understand how to embody these psychological signals that trigger automatic respect and deference. The most powerful people aren't necessarily the most qualified. They're the ones who most effectively communicate power through their presence, communication, and behavior. The first forbidden principle is assumed competence. Most people wait for external validation before claiming expertise or authority. They want degrees, titles, official recognition, or explicit permission before they act like experts. But the human brain doesn't wait for credential verification before deciding who to trust. It makes split-second judgments based on confidence, indicators, and then looks for evidence to support those initial impressions. When you speak and behave as if you already are the authority, people's brains automatically categorize you as authoritative. They don't consciously think, I should check this person's credentials. They unconsciously think, this person sounds like they know what they're talking about, so I'll trust their judgment until proven otherwise. This doesn't mean lying about qualifications or claiming expertise you don't possess. It means presenting whatever knowledge and experience you do have with the confidence of someone who deserves to be heard. Instead of prefacing your statements with disclaimers, qualifications, and apologies for your opinion, you state your position clearly and let others decide whether to accept or challenge it. The difference is profound. I'm not an expert, but I think maybe we should consider. The first statement immediately undermines your credibility before you've even made your point. The second statement presents your idea with the authority it may well deserve. The second principle is strategic positioning. Authority figures don't compete for attention. They command it through positioning. This applies both physically and socially. In physical spaces, they position themselves where they can see everything while being visible to everyone. They don't hide in corners or blend into crowds. They occupy space with confidence and purpose. Socially, they position themselves as central to important conversations and decisions, not by pushing themselves forward aggressively, but by consistently contributing valuable insights that make others want to include them. They become the person others naturally turn to when difficult decisions need to be made or complex problems need to be solved. This positioning happens through consistency over time. You consistently demonstrate good judgment, reliable knowledge, and strategic thinking. People begin to associate you with competence and wisdom. Eventually, they start deferring to your opinion automatically, because experience has taught them that your input usually improves outcomes. Machiavelli observed that the most effective leaders created situations where others sought their guidance rather than imposing their authority forcefully. When people come to you for advice and leadership, your authority feels natural and welcome rather than imposed and resented. The third principle is controlled emotional expression. Authority figures don't suppress emotions, but they express emotions strategically. They show anger at the right moments to establish boundaries. They display enthusiasm to inspire action. They demonstrate concern to show they care about outcomes. But they never appear to be controlled by their emotions. Most people's emotional reactions are predictable and excessive. They get too excited about good news, too angry about minor setbacks, too worried about manageable problems. This emotional volatility makes them appear less reliable and trustworthy for important decisions. But when your emotional responses appear measured and appropriate to the situation, people unconsciously categorize you as someone who can handle responsibility and pressure. They assume you will make better decisions, because you won't be overwhelmed by emotional reactions that cloud judgment. This doesn't mean being emotionless or robotic. It means your emotions appear to serve your purposes rather than controlling your behavior. When you show anger, it's because the situation genuinely warrants that response, not because you lost control. When you express excitement, it's to motivate others towards shared goals, not because you can't contain your enthusiasm. The fourth principle is information control. Authority figures know things that others don't, but more importantly, they control how and when information is shared. They don't broadcast everything they know immediately. They reveal information strategically to maximize its impact and demonstrate their unique access to valuable knowledge. This creates the impression that they always know more than they're sharing, which makes others curious about their insights and eager to gain access to their knowledge. People start paying attention to their statements, not just for the explicit content, but for the implicit information they might be holding back. You develop this by becoming genuinely more informed about topics relevant to your domain. You'll read more, research more, and think more deeply about subjects that matter in your professional and social environments. But instead of sharing everything you learn immediately, you share insights selectively, when they'll have maximum impact. When you do share information, you present it as conclusions rather than discoveries, instead of saying, "I just learned that." This subtle shift makes you sound like you've always known this information rather than recently discovering it. The fifth principle is decision-making confidence. Most people agonize over decisions, seek consensus, and hedge their choices with qualifications and escape clauses. Authority figures make decisions with apparent confidence, even when dealing with uncertainty and incomplete information. This doesn't mean being reckless or ignoring important considerations. It means accepting that most decisions must be made without perfect information, and that decisive action with course correction is often better than paralysis through When you consistently make good decisions quickly, people start bringing their problems to you because they know you will help them move forward rather than getting stuck in endless analysis. Your reputation for decisive judgment becomes one of your most valuable assets. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to act and fail than to fail to act. When action is required, people respect leaders who are willing to make difficult decisions and accept responsibility for outcomes, even when those decisions don't always work perfectly. The sixth principle is strategic vulnerability. Counterintuitively, authority figures occasionally reveal carefully chosen weaknesses or uncertainties that make them appear more human and trustworthy without undermining their overall credibility. This prevents others from seeing them as arrogant or out of touch while maintaining their leadership position. But these vulnerabilities must be strategic. You might admit uncertainty about minor details while maintaining confidence about major directions. You might acknowledge past mistakes that demonstrate learning rather than poor judgment. You might show concern about outcomes while maintaining confidence in your approach. The key is that these moments of vulnerability actually strengthen your authority by showing that you are secure enough to acknowledge limitations without being paralyzed by them. People trust leaders who are honest about challenges while remaining committed to finding solutions. The seventh principle is expectation management. Authority figures set and manage expectations in ways that make success more likely and failure less damaging. They underpromise and overdeliver rather than making grand promises they can't keep. This creates a pattern where their actual results consistently exceed their stated expectations. Building a reputation for competence and reliability, people begin to trust their judgment about what's possible and realistic, which increases their influence over group decisions and priorities. You achieve this by becoming skilled at realistic assessment of challenges, resources, and time, instead of optimistic estimates that make you look good initially, but set you up for failure later. You provide conservative estimates that you can consistently beat. This builds credibility that pays dividends in increased authority over time. But here is the most forbidden aspect of instant authority. It must be backed by actual competence over time. These psychological triggers can create immediate respect and deference, But if your actual performance doesn't justify the authority people have granted you, you'll lose credibility quickly and permanently. The goal isn't to fake authority you don't deserve, but to claim authority you do deserve more effectively than you currently are. Most competent people underclaim their expertise and underpresent their capabilities. They wait for others to recognize their value instead of communicating it clearly. Understanding these psychological principles allows you to present your genuine capabilities in ways that trigger appropriate recognition and respect. You stop hiding your competence behind false modesty and start claiming the authority that your knowledge and experience actually justify. Machiavelli observed that many qualified people fail to achieve positions of influence, not because they lack ability, but because they lack understanding of how authority is perceived and granted. They assume that competence alone will be recognized and rewarded, but competence must be combined with effective presentation to create real influence. The transformation that occurs when you master these principles is immediate and dramatic. People start treating you differently in meetings, social situations, and professional interactions. They defer to your expertise, seek your opinions, and include you in important conversations where decisions are made. But with this authority comes responsibility. People will start trusting your judgment and following your lead in ways that affect their outcomes and well-being. You have an ethical obligation to use this influence wisely and to continue developing the genuine competence that justifies the authority you've been granted. The most dangerous trap is believing your own authority performance so completely that you stop growing and learning. True authority requires constant development of actual capabilities, not just psychological presentation of existing ones. Remember that these principles work because they trigger evolved responses to leadership signals, but they work best when the authority you're reclaiming is legitimate and the competence you're displaying is real. Use them to overcome under-recognition of your actual capabilities, not to fake capabilities you don't possess. The people who will most resist your newfound authority are often those who were benefiting from your previous underassertion of your capabilities. They preferred when you made suggestions instead of decisions, when you asked permission instead of taking initiative, when you waited to be chosen instead of choosing yourself. Their discomfort with your increased authority is often evidence that you were previously operating below your actual capability level and that they were conscious or unconscious beneficiaries of your self-limitation. You're not the same person who started watching this video. You now understand how to trigger the psychological mechanisms that create instant respect and deference from others. You know how to present your genuine capabilities in ways that generate appropriate authority and influence. Use this knowledge to claim the recognition and influence that your competence actually deserves. Stop hiding your expertise behind false modesty, and start communicating your value in ways that others can recognize and respect. Step into the authority that your knowledge and experience justify. Like this video if you're tired of watching less qualified people receive the recognition you deserve. Subscribe if you understand that authority must be claimed through psychology as much as earned through competence. Because this isn't just about power dynamics. This is about ensuring that the most capable people get the influence they need to create better outcomes for everyone.